This week I read a story about a guy, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I will slaughter it. But he was born about 1,000 years ago, and he ruled a city in the Eastern European country of Belarus. His reign was quite uneventful. The only thing he did was build a large cathedral. But there is some interesting legends that was about him, though. He was also known as a sorcerer. But the one that I get a kick out of the most is his other nickname was the werewolf. Legend was that he could turn into a werewolf. And Belarus issued a commemorative coin in 2005 with an image of him in the foreground and an image of a wolf in the background. Now, for somebody who ruled a city for 57 years, it's really unfortunate that history knows him best as a werewolf. You know, history has not been very kind to Thomas either. And I think that's kind of a tragedy. Because just because you have seasons of doubts in your life doesn't mean that you doubt everything that you've ever heard or have ever believed in. Because if the truth be told, we're a lot like Thomas at times. So in a few minutes, I would like to look at the life of Thomas and try to gain some encouragement for our own walk of faith. We're continuing our sermon series today that we've simply entitled, Me Too. And we're looking at the different struggles that we all face in life. And at times, we all face seasons of doubt. There's questions that we don't have answers to. And what I want us to look at today is the seasons of doubt is not in and of itself a bad thing. But it's how we handle those doubts that determines our outcome. When we look over history and we look at the great men and women of faith, many of them also had doubts at times. We look at C.S. Lewis, who was the author of Mere Christianity, the Chronicles of Narnia, and the Screwtape Letters. He was also a renowned defender of the faith. But he once wrote, I have found that nothing is more dangerous to one's own faith than the work of an apologist. Now, an apologist is simply somebody who is defending the faith. So he's saying that even those who defend the faith, even those who know the scriptures so well, oftentimes still has questions. Still has things that they just can't answer. We look at the life of Mother Teresa. She's primarily remembered for her selfless service to the poor and to the sick. But there was a book of letters that was printed after her death that revealed that she even struggled with doubt at times. The letters showed a different woman than the symbol of Christian love and unwavering faith that the media had portrayed. It showed that human side of her, because she often wrote about loneliness, not hearing from God, personal sins in her life, and also doubt. She once said, darkness is such that I really do not see, neither with my mind nor with my reason. The place of God in my soul is blank. There is no God in me. When the pain of longing is so great, I just long and long for God. The torture and pain I cannot explain. But even though she experienced chapters of loneliness in her life, feelings of isolation from God, her devotion to her calling never changed. Her love for the poor and heeding God's commandments to take care of the least of these never changed. And then we look at Charles Spurgeon. He's one of history's greatest preachers. And he was not only a master communicator of the deep truths of scriptures, but he also engaged the audience by relating to their struggles. In one of his sermons entitled Desires of the Soul in Spiritual Darkness, he said, I think when a man says, I never doubt, it is quite time for us to doubt him. It is quite time for us to begin to say, oh, poor soul, I'm afraid you are not on the road at all. For if you were, You would see so many things in yourself and so much glory in Christ more than you deserve that you would be so much ashamed of yourself as even to say, it is too good to be true. And then we look at the life of Thomas. Thomas was one of Jesus' disciples, and he was not a half-hearted believer either. In John chapter 11, Jesus said that they should return back to the hill country of Judea so that they could raise Lazarus from the dead. The other disciples objected to this because the last time that Jesus was there, he nearly got arrested. But Thomas in 11:16 says, let us go and die with Jesus. Now that might be a little pessimistic, but it wasn't half-hearted. It was not about a lack of faith or doubt, but it was devotion. Later, in Jesus' last weeks, he was telling his disciples that he was going to go away, and that he would come back and take them to where he is. And they know the way. And Thomas asked, how can we go and be with you if we don't know where you're going? It wasn't doubt. It was a lack of understanding. Lack of fully realizing what God was talking about. That's a sincere desire to follow Jesus. Within 18 hours of Jesus saying those words, Jesus would end up dying a horrible death on the cross. All of his disciples scattered and fell completely away from the complete devotion that they once had. But as we all know, on the third day, on Sunday, on the first day of the week, Jesus rose again. And Jesus started to appear to some of his followers. He appeared to Mary Magdalene, then to other women. He appeared to Peter and two disciples on the road, and then he appeared to the rest of the disciples in a locked room. All except for Thomas. He wasn't there. We don't know exactly where he was at that point in time. But all we know is that he wasn't there. Later, Thomas found out about it. The others told him that Jesus is truly alive. Thomas didn't believe. He basically said, look, unless I see for myself and touch his hands and touch his side, I will never believe. Case closed. End of story. And at that point, we always look at Thomas and we see him as doubting Thomas, as if he's doubted everything about Jesus. I don't think so. He didn't doubt Jesus as much as he doubted what others was saying about him. Yeah, Jesus had already told him that he was going to die and 3 days later rise again, but no one either believed or no one understood. And if we look at it, all of them needed to see him to believe. But we all have doubts sometimes, don't we? But we're afraid to admit it. We're afraid of what other people might say or how other people might treat us. Maybe we begin to doubt whether the Bible is inerrant or that God exists or many other issues like how could he love me? For me, it started when I started at the Christian University. You know, when I started at KCU, I thought that I knew everything that I needed to know. I quickly learned I knew nothing. There was so many different ideas and different opinions on about every scripture in the Bible. If you're not careful, that can end up getting you confused and make you start to question your faith. Let me ask, is that always a bad thing? To question what you believe? Because if you never question to truly find out the answers, how can you claim that you stand on your own faith? Whether you're standing on the preacher's faith or you're standing on your parents' faith. But until you figure it out for yourself, you can't really call it your own. So while my education did bring up many questions for me, it still made me a stronger Christian and a stronger believer than ever before. Mainly because I didn't run from my doubt or my concerns, but rather I faced them head on. So don't be afraid to face your doubt. So let's face it, God is not afraid that you're going to disprove him. So I don't think all doubt is bad. Not all doubt is harmful. Doubts which are left unattended can fester and grow and can tear you apart. So give yourself that permission to doubt. Because here's what I see in this passage about doubting Thomas and how Jesus dealt with him. First of all, Jesus dealt with Thomas by knowing his doubts. Thomas had said, unless I see him and touch him, I won't believe. And Jesus showed up, and look at what he says. He says, put your finger here in my side. See my hands. See the hole where the spear went in. Go ahead. Touch it. Jesus knew Thomas. He knew what Thomas had asked for. He knew what it would take for Thomas to believe. I think that's important. Because Jesus knows your doubts. He knows where you struggle with your faith. He knows where you stumble. He knows what trips you up at times. He knows that you're doubting maybe some things that you hear. So go ahead and admit it. Just say it to him. Say, Lord, I'm having trouble believing that you're the only way. I struggle with believing that you rose from the dead. I believe that hell exists, but it still troubles me. Lord, you see my doubts. You know them. So help me. Because I believe the worst thing that we can do is hide them and act like they're not there. Because they end up constantly eating you up inside. They may even cause you to step away from your faith altogether. I also believe that God respects honesty. Because Proverbs 16:13 says, kings take pleasure in honest lips. And of course, God would too. And I also believe that if you seek him, you will find him. Because Deuteronomy 4:29 says, but from there you seek the Lord your God. You will find him. If you look for him with all your heart and with all your soul. I believe that if you honestly admit where you're struggling, where your doubts is, but really want to seek God in spite of them, then he will lead you to a place that you're content with the answer. And the answer at times might end up just being, trust me. I've proved myself many times before. You know, when we look at the book of Job and we see that Job is crying out to God, asking why. Why is this happening to him? You know, God never gives him an answer. Or rather, God shows him how powerful and how strong he truly is. You know, there's been times in my life that I've come across questions that I don't have an answer for. And then I remember everything else that I've learned. I look at what I consider the proofs of the resurrection to be. I look at the likelihood that anybody could fulfill the prophecies about the coming Messiah that Jesus did. And when I look at those other questions that I don't have an answer for, I go back to the core truths and go, I believe that, so I can believe this too. Because Jesus is truly the core of my faith. The second way that Jesus dealt with Thomas is he invited him. He said, come here, come look at me. Stretch out your fingers, touch me. I can stand up to the scrutiny is basically what he's saying. So don't hide your doubt. Let them know. And be willing to seek answers for those questions. Josh McDowell is an excellent author that has helped many people face doubt in their life. His books, More Than a Carpenter, He Walks Among Us, and A Ready Defense has helped many better understand their faith. So has Lee Strobel with his books of Case for Christ, Case for a Creator, Case for Faith. They have all been pivotal for my faith. Then you got Timothy Keller with The Reason of God. You got Jeff Vines with the Dinner with Skeptics. You've got C.S. Lewis with Mere Christianity. These are all books that I have in my office that I would love to give to you so that you can read. Or if you get on our website, there's a place on there called Blogs for Life, and there's different papers that I have put on there that I've wrote for my Masters of Divinity. Papers like Theodicy and the Problem of Evil. Theodicy is just a big theological word that means God's goodness. So how do we reconcile God's goodness with evil in the world? I don't know if I did a good job, but you might want to read it to find out. There's other papers that scientific naturalism, it's fighting against the idea that this just happened. All that we see is just an accident. I don't believe that. The things that we struggle with throughout our life. So you can get on there, read those, or if you want to read the books, let me know. Because if you're honest with God, I believe that He will help you overcome your doubts. 1 Chronicles 28:9 says, if you seek Him, He will be found by you. He also says in Malachi 3:10, test me in this. Now the context of that passage is speaking about tithing, but he's saying the same thing. He said, go ahead. See if I don't answer your questions. See if I can't help you get rid of your doubt. See if I can't open up your mind and make your faith make a little bit more sense to you. Because let's face it, it is faith. You won't get all of your questions answered. But He is more than able to take away that doubt that you face in your life. The third way that Jesus dealt with Thomas is that He welcomed him. You know, He didn't really scold Thomas. He didn't say, you know, Thomas, you're just an idiot. Or after all that I have done, you just don't get it. You don't understand. No, Jesus just simply said, stop doubting. The phrase literally means stop becoming an unbeliever. Yeah, doubt will lead you away if you don't check up on them. But doubt, once that you have resolved them, will make you stronger afterward. Once you've read, once you've prayed, once you've studied, once you've sought God, that doubt will vanish. And you will be left with a more rock-solid foundation than you'd ever had before. Now, I don't think Jesus minds that doubt. He's big enough to handle your questions and your concerns and your fears. His ego is not as fragile that if one of His children honestly seeks answers, that it's going to ruin his day. No, He might grow impatient with those who refuse to believe. But those believers who struggle with doubt at times, I don't think they try His patience. You know, just like the man who said to Jesus, I believe, help me overcome my unbelief. I think we need to pray honestly. Say, Lord, I trust you. But there are things that just doesn't make sense to me. Help me work them out. Help me reach a point where I'm okay with the answer that I'm given. And help me to always seek you and follow you with all of my heart and with all of my mind. Kathy Escobar wrote a prayer that she called the Doubter's Prayer. I'd like to share it with you. She said, God, sometimes I'm not sure. I don't understand. I can't understand. I don't know what I'm supposed to understand. I'm trying to let go, trying to hold on, learning, growing, stretching, leaving, coming, going. But what do I leave behind? What do I move toward? God, grow my faith, whatever that means. Not in man, not in systems, not in what someone else tells me I'm supposed to believe, but in you, the living God. The one who heals, the one who reveals, the one who restores, the one who turns the way of this world upside down. The one who calls me to mercy and justice and love. The one who stirs us to move. Yeah, that's all I really want. More of you and me. More of you and us. Amen. You know, maybe that's your prayer today. You want more of Him in your life. You have been struggling with doubt, or you've been struggling with sin. You have so many struggles in your life that you've been trying to fight on your own. You can't handle it anymore. You just want to lay your life down at His feet and surrender your all to Him. Maybe it's that you've never surrendered to Him. Or maybe it's you have, but you walked away. Or you strayed away. You let the doubts and the concerns of this world just pull you away. You can come back. Whatever your decision is, come now as we stand and sing.